Bueno, gracias Andrés por esa introducción, señor embajador. Es un placer estar aquí y sobre todo quiero felicitar a los nuevos demócratas. Siempre me gusta estar con nuevos demócratas, así que y a Simon Rosenberg por su liderazgo en empezar una charla, una serie de charlas sobre nuestras relaciones con Latinoamérica. And for some of you, I have now legitimized myself. For others of you, I have terrorized you. So let me say I'm really happy to be here in this kickoff of series. It's another example of NDN's leadership in understanding both domestically, the largest minority in the country who is growing exponentially, $1 trillion domestic marketplace, and has so many other factors that are going to be important to America's collective future, as well as our interrelationship with one of the most important parts of the world in our own national interest and security, which is Mexico, Latin America, and the Caribbean. So once again to you and Andres, thank you. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with my friend Ambassador Sarukhan. It was almost about exactly a year ago that I had the privilege of welcoming you, making some remarks at your welcoming ceremony, and it's been a pleasure to work with the ambassador. He is an exceptional advocate for his country and for our relationships, and we are incredibly pleased to be working with him. And we appreciate others as well who are represented here in terms of the broad range of voices that I think are important as we deal with our relationships across the hemisphere, representatives from the OAS, from some of the embassies, and I see my dear friend Chris Arcos, former ambassador of the State Department, and glad to see him here as well. I think the ambassador has done a great job. I told him I don't want to speak after him anymore. I want to speak before him from now on. He has done a great job, and very eloquently, of outlining our relationships, our challenges, and our opportunities. And I really find nothing that I would disagree with him on as the way in which he outlined it. I do want to start off, however, by first of all, let me just say I will try to stay as long as I can after my remarks. I am presently at a banking hearing on Bear Stearns and the $30 billion bailout, and my line of questioning is available to me in about a half hour. So I may have to leave at some point. It is not because I fear your questions, but because I want them to fear my questions at the banking hearing. So, but I want to start off by giving a quick snapshot of how I see U.S.-Mexico relationships at the moment. And I'm hoping that this will lead to a discussion of common challenges that can translate into real significant opportunities for a new paradigm of bilateral cooperation. While the media tends to focus on the challenges, the opportunities are just as compelling, just as compelling. And a true story of U.S.-Mexico relationships is our rich interdependence. The ambassador outlined them in so many ways. Whether it's Pemex oil that fuels a car in New Jersey or the Intel microchip that powers a computer in Guadalajara, we're connected in more ways than we think. And as Andrew Seeley from the Woodrow Wilson Center recently wrote in a report on U.S.-Mexico relationships, he said, quote, "There is hardly a person in Mexico who does not have a relative in the United States, or an American who does not know someone from Mexico. We have been connected for a long time, but I do think times are changing. I see a shifting trend towards a shared vision of strategic partnership, and I think we are finally realizing that only through that partnership, only through cooperation can we truly address the challenges that we face. I'm confident that by jointly addressing issues such as trade, environmental protection, terrorism, transnational crime, and immigration, we can find real opportunities for tangible and long-term progress. And I want to touch briefly on one or two of these issues. Immigration. First, this is a topic that has personal significance for me and great strategic significance for both countries. As some of you know, we fought hard here in the Senate last year for comprehensive immigration reform. I personally fought to make sure that the package was as comprehensive as possible and included a common sense, practical approach as it relates to border security. We need smart borders, not closed borders. And unfortunately, it's my view that this administration doesn't understand that if you build a 10-foot fence, someone will just bring an 11-foot ladder. I realize the symbolism that fences and walls have in Mexico. It harms our interest to alienate people with symbols of exclusion, and it makes it less feasible to collaborate on other migration control and counterterrorism priorities. Already the El Muro del Muerte, a wall of death, is a rallying call for opponents of free trade and other aspects of U.S. economic cooperation in Latin America. Simply put, unnecessary fencing, in my view, doesn't make any sense. And rather than building fences, we need to refocus on building friendships and alliances so that we can build trust and work together on issues like immigration. You know, we hear a lot about values here in Washington. For me, honoring our values means thinking long and hard about what it means to be a good neighbor. Unfortunately, the administration is still fixated on building walls rather than building trust. Recently, they decided that dozens of environmental laws, property rights, and I don't know how many debates I've heard in the Congress over my 16, 18 years here about property rights, but we are just going to obliterate property rights with the flash of an eye. And basic principles of economic are all going to be waived and stepped on in order to build 670 miles of fence along a 2,100-mile border. And this fixation with the fence on the southern border, while on the northern border, which is twice as long as the southern border, where the only person who ever came into the United States to do it harm, the Millennium Bomber, came through Canada, where in fact it doesn't take a rocket scientist. If I put all of my forces, all of my resources at one series of entry points into the country, and I really want to do America harm, I will seek the course of least resistance. So I have to question whether this focus on the southern border doesn't have other elements to it as well. In the Senate, and especially from the vantage point of my seat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I'm going to continue to work towards an immigration policy that isn't just tough, but is smart. Cross-border migration is tied to another major concern, and that's security. Mexico and Central America have been plagued by increasing violence perpetrated by drug cartels, youth gangs, and other criminal groups that threaten citizen security and political stability. And the problem isn't exclusive to one area, and the solution shouldn't be exclusive to one area either. So I want to talk about the Merida Initiative. I traveled to Mexico last fall with Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who I must say, as we kick off this series of dialogue and forums about our relationships with Latin America, here is a Majority Leader who, when he comes to Majority Leader 2 years ago, his first and only trip abroad is to Latin America. His second trip is to Latin America. He believes in a much different dynamic, and I applaud him for it. He and others who joined us on that trip went to explore ways our countries might work better together. One of the topics of hand was what the administration's Merida Initiative, and as a follow-up to that trip, we co-hosted a dinner sponsored by the Inter-American Dialogue with Deputy Secretary Negroponte, the ambassador, and others to get a better idea of the risks and rewards that such an initiative might provide. Let me be clear, as I have said in the past, and I want to say again, I believe a more systematic engagement with Mexico in a wide range of areas is long overdue. And I believe some aspects of the Merida Initiative are a very good start to this new engagement. But I am under no illusion that the Merida Initiative is going to dramatically reduce the drugs that enter the United States, something that I believe that needs to be addressed on an equal footing with equal priority is demand reduction in the United States. If we just continue to fight the supply, without doing anything about demand reduction, we will be in a perpetual battle. As you all know, the demand for drugs in the United States and the supply of weapons from the United States has helped fuel illicit activities and violence in Mexico for a long time, and it is not going to go away in just 3 years. That said, I recognize our role in these problems, and I recognize the gesture that President Calderon has made by reaching out to the United States to cooperate on these issues. And I believe we have an opportunity that we should not miss. When I met with President Calderon last fall, it was clear to me that we are now dealing with a government that has made a concerted effort to attack some of the most difficult problems facing Mexico. But this effort needs to include, in my view, sustainable development initiatives, and it needs to make it down to the state and local level, especially along the border, where much of the violence is taking place. The Merida Initiative is an opportunity to collaborate and coordinate across borders on a variety of critical areas: intelligence sharing, counter-narcotics, arms smuggling, and public security. But it needs to be more than buying into a relationship. It needs to be more than buying into a relationship. I don't think the U.S. taxpayer would be persuaded with the context of buying into a relationship. They want to see results, and they deserve to see results. That's why I've asked the State Department to come up with some metrics for us to be able to know after 3 years whether our plan is a success. I've seen what we've done in Colombia, and I don't want us to repeat some of the mistakes. There were some good things in Plan Colombia, which I supported, and there are some challenges to it. One of it is the fact that we came to realize later and later that sustainable development initiatives are critically important. I'd like to see what our allies in Mexico are going to do as part of the equation towards that itself. In terms of strategy, I believe the institution-building components of the Merida Initiative have the best long-term benefits for both of our countries. In the long run, it's the institutions that are going to transform Mexico. And I question whether we have struck the right balance between long-term institution building rather than simply short-term military interventions. I understand the justification for the use of the military, but I am concerned about human rights, and I am concerned about using the military to do the job of the police. It's not yet clear to me how Mexico will build up their police forces at the local level. It's not clear to me how the police in Ciudad Juarez are going to compete with heavily funded cartels driving around in bulletproof SUVs armed with .50 caliber guns. That said, I believe investing in Mexican institutions is a smart move, and the United States needs to move forward in a smart way. We already know that funds are going to be tight this year. We are in an unexpected shortfall in food assistance. We have floods in Bangladesh, and of course we have the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that continue to drain the national treasury of the United States. So while interest in these issues go beyond political parties and geographic boundaries, it's not immune to Congress's need to balance it with other priorities. So let me just say, I believe that these are transformative times both for Mexico and the United States. As neighboring countries, we will always be faced with new shared challenges. But when we face these new challenges, I think we cannot forget the ties that bind us together. Octavio Paz insisted to us, lo que pone en marcha los mundos es la interacción de las diferencias. What sets the world in motion is the interplay of our differences. At the same time, those interplay of our differences challenge us to find how we meet the common ground within that interplay of differences. I believe that we have a real opportunity to do that through this effort and through the willingness of a new government in Mexico to change the paradigm of our relationship. It is not an opportunity that we can lose, but at the same time it's an opportunity that we need to hone in a way that can withstand the tests of the moment and proceed to building a foundation for future opportunity. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you very much.